there's too many CV experts out there that write generic CVs for people across multiple different sectors. What you'll find is mining needs a little bit more of both sides of the spectrum. Like you said, you need to talk about your mineralization experience, your ore body experience, your planning software experience, your underground methodologies, your load and hauls, whatever it may be, your commodities, and even the countries in which you work, because one orogenic deposit's not the same as the next, even though they hold the similarities. So what you don't want to do is just write a bog standard CV that just talks about your duties.
I finally had a chance to sit down with Jon Taylor. Jon is a friend and we work with Jon. He's a recruiter based out of Australia that started the Discovery Group, which is his own outfit. Jon has a lot of experience and he's placed people in the industry for many years and quite high up. So he has a fantastic cross-section across the industry, and not just in Australia, but across the world. So I was really interested to talk to him. What do you see in this industry? Do we have a problem with talent? Everybody keeps talking about this, but is that a real problem? What trends does Jon see? And we even get into the nitty-gritty about CVs, right? Because obviously recruiters see so many of them, and he puts a lot of interesting material out on what you should and shouldn't do. But I thought I'd pin him down on a few things. Should you put a photo in your CV? What is a good CV? What is a bad CV? And what should companies put out when they're looking for the next person as well? So a whole bunch of different questions that I'm used to asking, and topics that are different to what I usually talk about. But this is really interesting, so hope you get something out of it. Let's go. Mr. Jon Taylor, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, yeah.
Looking sharp,
it's been a while
man.
since we spoke last, but doing well.
Yeah, no, you're looking good, man. Looking sharp. I love the background, Discovery Group. That's been a journey, eh?
Yeah, well, I thought you'd like it, since Discovery obviously has a lot to do with geology, but yeah, I wanted to keep it somewhat, geology related, given that's my specialty. But the sign was a gift from my partner when I first started up, and it's been on the wall every day since.
Yeah, no, I look super happy for you, man. It's not easy to start something, and I want to know much more about it. But yeah, it looks pretty slick. So really commend you on that. I've been looking to talk to you for a while. I should state for the record, we obviously work together. We've obviously spent a good bit of time together talking about the industry, and I'm really looking forward to this chat, because usually we talk to geologists, engineers, technical people, and as a can I say recruiter? What's the word that you want me to use? How would you describe your role?
If we're being somewhat sort of diplomatic, I'll call myself an option giver. That's how I sort of call myself these days. But if you're looking at the traditional job terminology you put on your card as you enter Australia or New Zealand, I put recruiter because it fits in the boxes. So yeah.
Yeah, you won't get offended, because previously working with some people, they're very picky about what they call a job like that. But like option provider, or whatever you said there, that's a nice way to put it, man. Because and again, for the listeners there, as a recruiter, we work with you, and I love how you position yourself in this pretty dark and damned world of ours, with all the industry problems that we face. And I've got a whole bunch of questions for you there, but tell me a bit more about how you landed there, because that's always something I'm interested in. I mean, you're not born in Australia, I'm guessing. So how did you get there, and how did you land in a role like this? Give me the background.
So I would love to say contrary to popular belief, but it's probably more popular than my own belief. I actually started as a non-mining graduate myself, so I actually have a major in psychology. I was going to do a doctorate, and the doctorates are very, very expensive things to do. So I went to get a job in a traditional office job, and it was selling sponsorship for a mining conference. After 2 years now a year and a half of doing that, I thought I could do it better myself, decided to start up myself. And then we did it in Africa, Russia, I think Mexico, Middle East, Scotland. One of them was in, which doesn't sound as appealing. And then when the GFC came, I decided to go into headhunting, because I'd fell in love with the industry by then. And soon after, I got the chance to come to Australia. and I lived in Brisbane. And now that was, I think, 12 years, 13 years ago now, I started my headhunting journey, just to international recruitment. And I just warmed and warmed and warmed to it. My family being from the valleys of Wales had coal mining in its blood. So that maybe it was meant to be from the start,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you combine the two passions I had of working in the industry and I guess helping people and helping companies. It was almost like it didn't have a choice by the end of it. I've just sort of been doing it now for so long. It's like second nature.
Yeah, yeah. And when you say, you say it with so much passion, when you say you love the industry, what specifically do you love about it? I mean, I feel the same, but it's difficult to describe because it's there's probably a bit of love with a little bit of hate sometimes as well. But what draws you into something? Because it's not something. If your family has a background in it, you're more likely to end up in there. But yeah, I for instance never had any ambition, knew nothing about mining, and then had the same kind of response. Like, shit, this is not only cool with the people in it and so on. What makes you say you love it so much?
It's actually funny you say that because I had this question probably the fourth or fifth year into doing what I do now. And I compare it a lot for someone that I call an outsider like myself. I compare it a lot like going on holiday to a country that's very far outside your comfort zone, somewhere that doesn't speak the same language as you. And I've learned like the language through just proximity of speaking to professionals like yourself, Renee, like the people I represent. And they're just so giving in terms of information and giving in terms of, in the grand scheme of mining, I still walk into every conversation as, a fresh face, say, 8-year-old that's willing to just learn information. And people are just more willing to give their time and give information to sort of expedite my growth in terms of knowledge and representing people to very, very technical and senior roles around the world.
Yeah.
So I compare it a lot to that, but I've also done, dabbled in other industries, and this is nothing against finance, IT, tech. People find their niche in there and do very well. But I just find mining a lot more warm. Like I can speak to a South African mining CEO as much about Wales's suffering in rugby as I can about, narrow vein, block caving, or orogenic mineralization, so on and so forth. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's been the main crux of it, is the acknowledgement that I'm trying to do a job, but also understanding I'm trying to learn at the same time, whether it be about the culture of the organization, which Renee, we have talked about numerous times,
Yeah.
all the way up to what technical skills will make someone stand out on paper, but also in person when interviews start happening.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. And as you were saying that, I mean, I think a lot of people when they think about recruiters, they just do a mechanical job. It's a placement, there's a CV, there's an email, and you connect the dots. And clearly, there's so much more to it, right? So give me the biggest misconception for the work that you do, where either clients or the people you try and help place misunderstand what it is that you do. I mean, because the reason I like working with you, because you think alongside me as a partner, right? You try to work out what I need and what the person needs, and then you really genuinely try to put, your psychology background is probably super useful there, right? Because you try to be a matchmaker of some sort on an ongoing basis with
Yeah,
15 different nodes on any given point, right? But what is that? Do people get that everywhere, or is there still like a strong misconception in the industry where you have to battle to sell what it is that you do?
I think there's always a misconception, but there's always an exception to the rule at the same time. Like a lot of recruiters are heralded in the industry because they have found someone a dream role, or they have found someone that makes a company money, for example, that the company would not have found themselves. I go into every search with an air of everyone has a network. So if someone finds someone through their own network, look, that was always going to happen. What I'm here to do is almost be a break glass in case of fire type person, that if your network or if your search parameters are fruitless, then break that, that red box on the side of the wall. Jon Taylor sort of flies in, as it were, takes a role brief with the questions I typically ask, and then will utilize my network that I've garnered and cultivated over 16 years now. And I guess that's where I think that recruiters often don't get the justification that they do have a placeholder in the industry, and whatever industry they choose
Yeah.
to work in, is everyone has to start somewhere. But we obviously speak to hundreds, if not thousands, of people a month, and thousands of people a year. Our
Mm.
network cultivates a lot quicker than some people actually think they do. But also, you can soon tell who's a good recruiter that's, embarked on a journey within that industry, and who's in it because it's the flavor of the month. If mining
Hmm.
is doing well, you'll find a lot more recruiters going into the mining industry. Then all of a sudden, AI is big, and then all of a sudden they'll put their hand up in the office and they'll go and jump into AI because this is a
Yeah,
successful
yeah.
sector. But you know pretty soon from the questions that a recruiter asks if they're the real deal or not. And I think that is where we often have the misconception, is for every, and I hate to use this word, for every cowboy in any industry, there's a
Hmm.
good person on the other side of things as well. And, there's competitors of mine that I look up to, and,
Right.
I look at the way they market themselves, I look at the way how they articulate themselves, the companies they work with. There's no accident. There's no smoke without fire in those cases. So I think
Yeah.
the common misconception is, you know, we spend our lives learning to a degree where we're taken seriously in this industry, and want to be taken seriously by the people we represent, but also the companies we represent. And I think that's often a misconception, that we're in it for a quick buck, which,
Yeah.
I would love to say I got my millions and retired to the
Yeah.
Bahamas, but yeah, still
Yeah.
slogging away for my own brand now. So not
But
quite there
you,
yet.
you get this. I mean, sometimes you just you're working with somebody and they might not be asking the right questions, or you feel that they're not really trying to either look for the right thing or find the right thing, or you kind of sense that it's not the right target that they're chasing. Do you try to work with people to try and change their minds, or kind of take them on the journey? Because this is probably a picture that you've seen 10,000 times before, and maybe this group, that's either something that is not going to exist or not what they need in your experience. How do you handle? Do you have those kind of situations? Or?
Um, my mantra has changed a lot over the years. Now, obviously, as I'd like to say better and more, um, sort of more in deep with the industry, and I feel myself more of a link to the industry than I did when I first started.
Right.
I've lived by different mantras, and my main mantras right now is whoever I represent or want to represent, it's their career and not mine. So by trying to sell them something, or by trying to sell them a company that will never work, or a mindset for a FIFO roster will never work,
Yeah.
that seed of doubt will be there from day one to the day they step foot on the mine, or the exploration deposit sites. I know that if a seed of doubt ends up growing, I may have to end up replacing that person sooner rather than later. So I like to go on the journey with them and just take all the pressure off it. I like to be less of a used car salesman, and not, obviously that's
Right.
a stereotype in itself.
Yeah.
More of a, like I said earlier, an option giver. Like,
Yeah.
it's at the end of the day, if I want to represent someone, and I am representing a role that I'm assigned to work on, and I'm identifying that as a role that could fit in with their next move,
Yeah.
and it's not a marriage, I still have to represent that person, and I still have to represent and fill that role. So
Yeah.
it's no skin off my nose, basically, if they don't marry, because I still have to represent both. I
Yeah.
still have the role to work on. I just be with somebody else, and I still have to find that individual a better fit. But that serves as a template to put me on the right path.
Yeah.
So I've just been more, I wouldn't say relaxed, but I've just been less, I need to fill this role tomorrow. This role is so important to the company. It'll get filled with the right person when that right person comes along.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
obviously needs for me to do the sourcing and the search to the highest parameters that the company set up for me. And obviously through the answers I get, through the questions I ask.
Yeah. No, fair enough. And I mean, that raises another question. I mean, what do you're pretty active online, right? So you're clearly reading the news out there, right? Because you could just wait for the next CV to drop in the email box and then find somebody. But you're engaged with the craft, so you're trying to follow the news out there. What are you seeing, and without necessarily going down the usual routes of education and issues around universities and blah blah blah? What are the trends that you're seeing that are either big risks or big opportunities there? Because, and just to sort of trying to lead you to where I'm going. I mean, everybody's talking about the lack of skills, but so were they 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 and 40 years ago, right? So as I've had a number of discussions on this channel already, the pendulum will do what the pendulum will do, blah, 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 yada, yada. But so the resources will come from somewhere else. If it's not traditionally WA, it might actually come from China, or there might be geologists coming from Indonesia across, right? So what trends are you seeing? And are you generally worried about some, or do you actually see opportunity in some or others?
I think the answer is twofold in a way that I think that at the back end of people's careers, what you're seeing now is because, obviously more and more people are retiring because of the way that the industry has been. Like you said, the cyclical nature of the industry sees this problem of skill shortage come up every time there is even a remote sign of a boom coming up. But I think the problem is now at the front end as well, where less people are, like I said earlier, not coming through the graduate schemes, and that's in some of the big players like Australia, all over, US, Canada, UK, South Africa. There's just less people coming through because mining just doesn't have that luster anymore for the youth. And I think because less people are coming through, what you're finding is that middle third, so those people who maybe have 5 to 15 years experience, are getting thrust into roles maybe before they're ready. Maybe they have to take their career on a slightly different sort of side quest to get where they need or want to be. And I think that's been a little bit of turmoil for the industry, just because it's almost like a pick your own adventure type book, where you're scrolling through the pages and trying to get to the destination you want to get to. But because of what the industry's doing, and the industry's bigger than any one mining engineer, any one company, you might see your career path get a little bit fragmented because the company needs you. And if you're loyal to that company, then of course you're going to help them out because they need you. So that's one issue I've seen is I've seen companies try and sort of steal from their neighbor, as it were. And that's the thing. There's not enough to fill the actual sort of round peg, round hole systematic approach to recruitment, especially in mining, that I used to see. So yeah, that's the big thing, is people have definitely taken a side quest from what they maybe want to do in some cases. And then, you can go into things like, expats and geopolitical issues, and there's enough expats doing what they used to do. Rosters are changing, contractors are changing their rosters. There's myriad issues, but I think, the one compounding issue is the middle third have been stretched for what the industry needs them to do. Essentially, at the front end, you're not getting enough grads, you're not getting enough people at sort of 2 to 5 year experience. At the back end, you're obviously getting the constant flow of people retiring, and in the middle third, you're getting people getting sidetracked, doing what I call side quests. From, if their career, it was linear, they go from A to Z in a normal career. Right now, they're going from A to 8.1 to 8.2 before they get to Z, right? Because the companies are asking them, look, could you do us a favor? It's short term. We're doing some recruitment for this type of person. We'll take the load off you. So people are being asked to do jobs that either are spinning more plates on top of what they normally would do. And one example would be, if you're focused purely on short-term planning, you're being asked to do medium and long-term. That's probably one example where I could use, where you're being asked to do a little bit more than you typically would.
So this is really interesting. So we're definitely in an interesting climate then, where I dare say things have gotten harder rather than easier in the last 10 years. I mean, it sounds like there's a limitation in the pool. There is a shortening of the pool, or whatever you would call that. That middle third, there might not be enough there. But do you? I mean, and everybody's fighting for the same talent. So obviously, if times are great, there's a lot of people that come into recruiting, because I think a lot of opportunists, maybe some cowboys, think it's easy money, which is obviously bringing some of the disrepute to sort of the work that you do. Everybody comes in, everybody's living off the good times. And, arguably right now it's a bit tricky because, the lithium, iron ore, and the commodities, gold is good, but there's all this chaos going on, and you've got this strange lack of resources that we're dealing with. Do you feel from where you're sitting, do you see clients struggling more and making concessions on that hiring strategy? You talked about short term and so on. And do you then also make the same concessions when you talk to other people? Do you feel collectively we're making concessions, or is there still some opportunity to hold on to long term and quality and good building and all those principles that you want to build into that?
Some clients will automatically at the front end of a process already have in mind what their plan Bs are. But at the same time, they will typically find their people through their own means because they're already making those concessions. Where people like myself come in are the more strict clients. So, from our work together, René, obviously, you're specializing in a certain criteria of person that needs to turn heads for your business to sort of win business, but also, succeed in an area that is very sort of technically unique, let's say. And those clients are the ones that I typically work with. I'm not one of, this is going to sound like a bit of an ego stroke, but I don't classify myself as one of those recruiters or headhunters, option givers, whatever we get termed as, that will, dare I say, take from Peter to pay Paul and then sort of backfill that role. I have a finite amount of clients in, let's say, Gold in Western Australia where I will service them. I know the culture. I know the HR very well. The HR person and myself will jump on a call with the line manager. He will tell me, or she will tell me, everything that is to know that they technically want.
Yeah.
And then the HR person will then feed into, this is what makes us a good culture. But within that, what I'm seeing right now is everyone's got the same vision. Everyone's got the same culture. If I see the word dynamic in the job description one more time, I will rip my hair out. You've got to stand out above the crowd now. So the whole, you're almost shaving down the sides of a square peg to make it round, to fit in that round hole sometimes, rather than finding an individual that can learn the skills, but they already have the foundation of the skills, but they can also learn them through good mentoring, through rubbing shoulders with the right caliber of individual that you already have in your team. And I think that's where the balance needs to come now. You need to understand what the market's doing. I'm speaking to people about, starting programs where, we go back a step and go pre-university to sort of get people more invigorated by the mining industry again. But right now we kind of have to deal with the cards we're dealt. So kind of have to make do with the skills that are in the pool right now and how can we best utilize those. But at the same time, there's people at the other end of the scale, René. There's people that are, dare I say, nearing retirement that still feel they have a lot to offer the industry. And I feel that utilizing their skills to maybe train up those more junior people or those people spinning multiple plates, and people at the back end of their careers add some versatility to the industry whereby they can do the long-term plan, and that's all they want to do. They're not looking to be the next CEO of Northern Star Resources or launch the next M&A strategy for, tech. They're just looking to do a job, earn some money, and just stay within the industry. So I often wonder, and I've seen a lot of recruiters mention it, that's not my sole sort of idea. A lot of recruiters have said, can we, get some people that have something to offer into the industry to add something on, take some of the flack off these people that have been asked to do more.
Yeah. That's interesting, and maybe this is a tricky question for you to navigate. But this ageism thing has been, has been flagged by a number of people, particularly people who obviously struggle to get work and who, like you say, are super experienced. But I do sense it as well that people seem to be really on that lookout for what you might call that middle third. Have you noticed that, let's say, in the last 15 years? Has that changed at all? Do you sense that ageism? Do you see a little bit sneaking through every now and then of discrimination, or however you want to? And this is not on your clients. Let me make it very clear, right? I just want to get a feel for, because people don't understand. I mean, everybody thinks, recruiting is simple, but it's not simple. It's not simple at all, right? There's a lot that comes into it, and I feel a lot of people might not get that. And I've got all these questions that you would want to ask, but obviously you would only know after a lot of experience how the finesse really works. Do you see that agent still sitting in there, that when your clients keep saying, no, not that guy, not that lady, not this, do you feel a little bit of that happening at some time?
you often cut through a lot of the noise. Let's say I won't use profanity in terms of
Yeah,
what I actually am thinking, but you cut through a lot of the noise by asking one simple question, which is why. When you're looking for feedback, if you want to know why, and the reasoning either sounds like fluff or sometimes it isn't reasoning, you can kind of guess there's some sort of ism behind it.
yeah, right.
And that, there's so many different isms, but I think that is now it's not leaving us because I think that there's always, the inherent need to get sort of more females in the industry, more, youthful people in the industry. And I kind of feel sometimes we accidentally, and I stand on that hill, we accidentally blinker ourselves to look for servicing and getting the minority into the industry when we have the majority to aim for.
Yeah,
And that's not enough. I think, any industry you look at will have an ism that they're trying to get, away from, but then you're ignoring. It's almost like going into, like a bank, for example, that has a deal on for new customers when you have an existing customer base already there. I feel that sometimes, you're so focused on getting more people into the industry from a certain demographic of the population that you often ignore what's right in front of you. It's almost, I think the analogy is obviously like you leave your keys, somewhere you always leave them, but you glance over them once and all of a sudden they're lost. And then,
yeah.
you look where they were all the time. Like, oh, of course they were there.
That's
Um,
probably just society dragging us into that space, right? Because I mean, from where I'm sitting, mostly dealing with geological roles, right? A lot, a lot of people are looking for different skills. Like what computer software skills do you have to drive a certain package? I don't care. You'll learn that, but how good of a geologist you are has arguably become less important. If you'll see, even online or the CVs that we get, it's. I'm always frustrated, and I was going to get to your list later, but and because you put a little post out the other day, which I really enjoyed. The do's and the don'ts of CVs, and I do want to get to that. So here's a heads up. But I mean, I'm frustrated if you can't even tell that as a geologist. What? Tell me about the rocks, man. To tell me about what systems you worked on, and not necessarily just commodities, right? Don't talk about it from our gold. What kind of gold? What, have you worked with paleo places, with structure, intrusion related, or porphyry? I mean, what is it? And there seems to be a more mechanical focus on other skills that, to me, aren't always that relevant. Again, something that you're picking up on, or what are your, and then as an extension to that, what are your pet peeves that
oh,
you would warn against? And I mean, we could sit here forever, I'm
I don't
sure.
think we've
But
got a podcast long enough on like pet peeves. So mining and mining is a very unique. So mining is very unique to me because I spoke to someone a couple of years ago that was working in Peru that knew someone who was a GM or an operations manager in Cobalt. Like, how many other industries do you know that, that, dare I say, incestuous nature of an industry as a global industry comes into play? So mining has a lot of uniqueness about it. And I feel that resume writing, and I will write post after post after post about this, that there's too many CV experts out there that write generic CVs for people across multiple different sectors. What you'll find is mining needs a little bit more of both sides of the spectrum. Like you said, you need to talk about your mineralization experience, your ore body experience, your planning software experience, your underground methodologies, your load and hauls, whatever it may be, your commodities, and even the countries in which you work, because one orogenic deposit's not the same as the next, even though they hold the similarities. So what you don't want to do is just write a bog standard CV that just talks about your duties. Number one, if you're, a technical geologist like yourself and like who you look for, René, and obviously I'll use an example from the work that we've done, you want to know about the technical aspects, but at the same time, just listing duties. If you have two exploration geologists next to each other in resume form, they should read identical if you just purely base it on their duties. However, if one made a discovery and one didn't,
that's a good
then
point.
you're gonna go with the person who made the discovery. It's the achievements that separate us in everyday life, and that goes. That's That's not just in mining. That's any sector. But in mining, I've found that if you put like literally, you could put two of the same person in front of me, and one is written by a generic CV writer, and one is written about increased safety performance by 25% and discovered a 3 million ounce deposit and introduced a new software and mentored a national Indonesian to become a superintendent. That's impressive stuff. That's the stuff that I want to read. It's the stuff employers want to read. So I find that people are just doing themselves more of an injustice by writing generic CVs whereby they focus more on, what I did day to day than what I did in the 2 years I was there, the 3 years I was there. What did I leave the job better coming out than I did going in? That is what your CV is for.
But ironically, that's a red flag by itself, right? Because then you can go and tell them to change their CVs. But if they don't have the ability, you probably, as you pointed out online yourself, even in executive roles, if they don't have that understanding around they're building their own CV, then they're clearly not really quite valuing how they should both sell themselves and understanding what the reader wants to read and know about, which is by itself probably a bit of a red flag. And then that leads to a question. I mean, of 100 CVs that you see, how many people get that right? If you would be the employer, of 100 CVs, are there 5 going to the yes pile, or are we talking 40 here? I mean, how bad is it from where you're sitting, or how good it is? Let's keep it positive, right? How
Well, look, hell might freeze over because a recruiter is about to say something glass half full. It never happens. So you might want to sort of clip this and save it and put it into the into the ether of the internet. But I find myself seeing the value in someone's resume. And look, it's probably based on experience. I've been doing it for 16 years now. One person's Grasberg is another person's Kennecott Copper, which is another person's Super Pit in WA. But then again, some people might not want the thoroughbreds of someone that's worked at Rio Tinto for 25 years, right? So you can read between the lines of what a client wants based on the questions. So I always give someone the benefit of the doubt if I can see that the sites they worked at, or there's some hint of education needed to just boost that person's resume up a little bit more. I can do that in 5 minutes on a phone call when I'm sort of pre-screening or interviewing them, call it what you will. So I don't mind coaching someone, and I don't want someone paying, for someone that calls himself a CV expert in terms of writing, when that person probably, the last CV on their pile was probably someone in the finance industry, and then the next one on top of the mining person's resume is someone maybe from the IT industry.
Can you tell,
they'll give them the
by
same
the way?
advice.
Can you tell when you get a CV and it's gone through the ringer?
Mainly when I'm on the phone with them.
Right.
If I ask them a question, and like I want to lift the curtain on my favorite question that I ask everybody when I'm representing someone. And I'm just going to log on my little board up here, so excuse my eyes going off the camera. But my favorite 2 questions are: what top 5 achievements you're most passionate about? Because that you can tell a lot about someone. Because if it's very mentor heavy, then you're like, well, you're a manager, you're a leader of people. If it's technically focused, then hey, you're a principal, you're a subject matter expert. But if their CV says one thing and their answers give another, it's often a red flag that either they've not written all of their CV, or Mr. Chad GPT has had a hand in it maybe. But also the misuse of hyphens is often one that is or full stops or commas. You can see from how they maybe articulate themselves on their LinkedIn profile versus their resume.
So it's not just me, thank Christ.
And look, we do look at I look at these things, but I'm not sure if that says more about me than the person writing their resume. I'm not sure, but I'd like to be thorough to the extent where if I go forward, because I think, not wanting to make this answer too long-winded, I like to put all of the hurdles about someone's positives and negatives up front. Because I want them to have the fun part of shining a spotlight on themselves throughout the process. The fun part of us starting a new role is shining a spotlight on yourself and saying all of the good things that you've done in your career. So why would we waste time with falsifications on resumes or not even writing a resume yourself. Be true to yourself, because you don't need to lie. Everything you've done up to the day of the interview, you've done. That's all you talk about. If that's not what the client wants, then you can't change your career 30 minutes before the interview. There's a job out there for you. It just happens not to be that one. Yeah. So like I said earlier, by taking a lot of the pressure off my shoulders and their shoulders, they should enjoy the process a bit more. Who doesn't like talking about themselves? I mean, I know probably 300 recruiters in Ryan's bar in Sydney on a Friday that certainly do, but
well, not everybody's an extrovert.
Yeah, that'll be a story for another day. And Ryan's bar is probably the Wall Street get together of recruitment in Sydney.
But is it?
I don't live there anymore, and that's probably one of the reasons why, maybe.
We share all your fun stories amongst each other. Yeah, sure. Well, so how about, so I've got two favorite questions, and they're probably all the wrong questions because, I find it hilarious if geologists try to be recruiters, and I guess I run a business, so you have to have these discussions. So one of my questions, you can tell me if this is something you would do. I always ask, what's something you're not very good at? And then not to drag the conversation, because the thought came to mind because you're talking about the positives and so on. And it's not to necessarily drag the conversation in negative space, but it is really interesting to hear people generally talk about, because most people, nobody lies, right? When you're sitting there on paper, people tend to kind of skew things a little bit, right? And that's easier to do. But when you're talking to somebody, it takes a strange person to actually clear out lie. So if you ask a question, and that's probably what you were talking about before, is it different to what they said in their CV? So when you quite casually say, okay, tell me something you're not very good at, you'll 99 out of 100 times, you get the genuine truth. And the way that's positioned and how they kind of turn that into a positive, because that's kind of what you should be doing. So because if you know your weakness, that's the strength, right? That's kind of where I'm always looking for that little turn. And the answers that I've gotten over the years are really helpful there. Because, I find it important for people to understand their weaknesses. And, I'm always trying to work on that myself. Probably will never get there, but it's a nice question to throw out there. And the second one is a favorite as well. What's the last paper you've read? Particularly when you're talking about a technical role, right? And I think I mentioned this to you before, but that's always, there's no backing out of that one, because you can't make it up, because you then have to literally on the spot think about a paper that you've never read. So there is a lot that in the next 3 seconds then happens that tells you a lot of things. And I'm always, so there I gave all the secrets away now for any conversation I'll ever have for the 3.5 people that listen to this conversation. But
it's giving someone the platform, right? I mean, if you give someone the platform to be humble or show humility, it's a very innate human sort of sort of link that you have. Then you form a bond with that person. Going, well, I'm not good at certain things in recruitment, but I'm sure that you'll admit you're not good at certain things in geology. We're not great across the board. Otherwise, I'd be the most headhunter in the world. You get every single client knocking on your door for work. We're not completely perfect. So if you give someone the platform, and this kind of goes into a further point, which I didn't want to, because it's a can of worms in its own right. Educating interviewers as well as the interviewees is probably going to be paramount moving forward, because I think that too many times I've come out of process, and not too many times, I've probably elaborated a bit too much there, but there are certain times where they're too monotonous, they're too almost robotic, as in question, answer, answer.
Yeah.
Converse with them, have a conversation, drop in open questions, give people the platform to show where they're strong, but where they're weak, hire a person, don't hire a robot, there's, people are going to make mistakes. People are going to be slightly slower at doing certain things than others. Certain people are going to be, waxing lyrical about how good their team is. Other people are going to want to sort of be perfectionists. So I think there is also an aspect of educating the interviewers as well, to sort of have really in-depth conversations and not in-depth interviews, because much like mentoring and leadership, interviews and conversations aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
They hold a link, they hold a bridge, but they're not the same thing. And I think you get a lot more of an open conversation. You do a robotic, because you get AI to do that for you.
Yeah, well, you make a good point, and I was going to flip it around as well, because we do, and this is another online exchange that I was watching the other day, where there was an ad out for an exploration manager, I think, it's sort of classic WA stuff, but it was a 5-page, this is what we're looking for, with 500 duties and 600 responsibilities, and a person commenting on it, a rather prolific commenter on things, if that says enough, it made the point from who would ever want to work for this company if that all fits in a 38-hour work week. And that got me to think, well, they obviously have a responsibility to put something out that is well written and asks for the right things and isn't, immediately a showstopper. Do you, on the education piece, like you just said, it goes two ways, right? Do you see sometimes what clients are asking for is just not the right, they won't find a person, or it's just so far beyond the pale of what can be expected that you think, guys, you're wasting your time with this? Is there some coaching on that end required?
Yeah, so again, it's something you learn over time. My process now, I have this process where I stick to it regardless, and it's kind of like, for me, if anything goes wrong outside of my process, then it's something that I can't control. Like if there's a permitting issue in Burkina Faso, for example, I can't control that, but my process remains the same. So one of my questions is, if a resume came across your desk today, what's the first 3 to 5 things you would look at that would put that person in the yes file? And it just cuts the job description, basically in half immediately. Because if a client can't sum up all of their aims in 3 to 5 bullet points, then they're too diffuse. And all of a sudden, what you start asking for is everything you'd like to have. Because if somebody got hired for Discovery Group, the list I'd want, or the list I'd like to have, would be endless. But you've got to be realistic at the same time. Everybody wants a unicorn, but look, I could duct tape a horn and horse and call it one, and it's not going to be exactly what you want. So, there's lines of questions, and like I said, if the aims are too long, then the job is too diffuse. You probably have to go back to the drawing board and actually look at what do we actually need versus what do we actually want, because they've, again, very different lists.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah, so what's on the Post-it notes that are sort of tagged around your screen? I was going to ask, what are the sort of 3 things that you wish people would stop doing? And I'm sure you would have posted about this before, but if you would have from a consulting side, we have plenty of the, the one I always think of, do we try and give the client what they ask for or what we think they need? Those are the sort of repetitive ones, and then there's a bunch of similar things. What patterns do you see where it's, I wish we'd all stop doing that, I wish you would all stop doing that, and for instance, you said you're making sure that the CV is only 2 pages, what a bunch of baloney. So what are some top 3s that the do's and don'ts, sort of the ones that you would wish you'd never see again?
That is a good question. There's so many. That's why it's a good question, because there's so many, not there's so little.
There's something that you might even see right now, or something even in the last week, that you go, damn, there's another one or another thing that I wish we could live without, or some version of that.
It's definitely the ignoring the successes. I'll talk about it till I'm blue in the face. Like, so many people just they write these 1 or 2 pages because, like you said, it's a myth, and it's a myth that's the same as 3,000% of people that take a counter offer end up leaving in the first 6 months. Like, where's that come from? I'd like to see the actual stat where that's come from.
Yeah.
And it's like was it 50% of all stats are made up. But that's one, is ignoring successes. Sometimes I'm on the phone to the person and I'm like, it's like a different person because they're waxing lyrical about what they've done, but it's not in their resume. And I feel sometimes almost feel like they're bragging. Yeah. And there's a lot of humble people in the industry.
But that's it. It's humbleness, right? People just don't like talking about themselves in that sort of excessive positive. It makes them feel awkward. If you're not going to sell yourself
in your resume, when are you going to do it? It's probably your one chance. It's probably your the back of the book tells you how good a book is, and it gets all the reviews from the newspapers. The CV is your chance to do that. It's your chance to make a comment on your own resume.
100%. I mean, I have no problem with it, but I'm an arrogant asshole. So that's some more humble people might feel But yeah, it's a fair point. Maybe just close this one out for us once and for all, because I'll tell you where I sit after you answer. But picture, yes or no?
No.
Okay, I'm a yes man.
Only because I feel that it it takes up space you could be using for something else. And I don't
Okay.
like all this fancy formatting on resumes. Like
Yeah.
you'll have these streaks of yellow in the corner, and you'll have
Uh,
this Picasso like squiggle in the left hand side. And not that, it's the be all and end all of what we do in recruitment or headhunting, but
sure.
those resumes don't get stored there. I haven't got some sort of mind palace where everyone's details
Yeah.
are stored. I like to think I have a pretty good memory for people, and hopefully, if anybody from my network is watching this, and I've called them up in the past week thinking, "Oh, I've got a role coming up for you that
Yeah.
does this, this, and this," and John, that sounds perfect. Then
Yeah.
maybe the mind palace does exist, but
But
they
isn't
go
that,
into
sorry, just to interrupt, because isn't that how the brain works? Because, I look at a lot of CVs as well. And if you see somebody that generally say, okay, this just reads well, and, the cover letter, to me, and that's maybe how different brains work. If there's a picture there, I remember the picture as the thing that links all that good stuff to that person. And it's far more likely to pop into my head if it's just, rather than it's just a bunch of Arial font 11, on white paper. And I'm not a yellow fringe person. That needs to be clean. I'm 100% with you on that one. But and the second component to that, I don't know. I'm just a sucker for smiles. I just can't help it. And I'll tell you a little story, and then maybe you can counter it.
my arguments.
It's because there's this guy from, I think he was from Bangladesh, and he was an older gentleman, and he sent me a CV for a consulting role in West Perth. He didn't have a visa, and it's just like 10 or 12, 15 years ago now. And, experience, some bit with SRK in India office, somebody had experience. But he had a photo on there, and it was the most objectively unwelcome photo that you could possibly think of. I mean, I just a chagrin, and as a reaction as a person, it's like, this will not be fun, is the first thing you think. And I had a conversation with him because we did speak on the phone. I said, look, how about you just take that picture again and smile to the camera? And so he did. And he rang me up 2 or 3 months later, and he got a job. And he blamed it on the picture because it's I don't know, a little fun story. Obviously, of course.
You get a job with RSC though. I don't think if that's the case, then you hire again.
Yeah. No, he did. I don't know where he landed, but I always remember that was fun because I remember seeing the CV and he had this super grinny smile, like ear to ear, and that clearly must have triggered something somewhere. So anyway, look, jokes aside, I do. You can tell quite a bit from a person's, just a joy of life thing. Maybe it's the wrong thing to say. I don't know. Maybe it's a no rule. I'm happy to be put in my place in that.
It's more commonplace because, like, my CRM system that I use, because, like I said, and this is what I was getting at. The resume has to go somewhere. So the more information you can get in your resume with, dare I say, not that I base my recruitment career on this, but more buzzwords, more words that are eliciting a reaction to jump on the phone, that have causality for me to get on the phone with them or to me approach them about some of the other roles I may have on. Then take that time. But it's more commonplace now. My CRM system that I use actually takes a picture from someone's resume and puts it on my system so that I can sort of see their nice smiley faces when they come up. So it's more commonplace because I put them into the system and they're stored there, and the picture comes up automatically. So I'm seeing it more and more. And not that there's no right or wrong answer for it. It's the same as, do you include your references, right? Do you include your hobbies? Like there's a right way, and there's a people will say there's a right way and a wrong way.
Oh, look,
there's
I didn't
no right
want
way
to.
or wrong way to do it.
You're right. It's subjective and it depends on the role. And I'm sort of being a bit silly here because there is.
But there'd be selfies soon, René.
What's
we're in
that?
that we're in that era now. There'll be selfies, people like this
Yeah,
taking a
yeah.
picture of themselves with the Pilbara in the background, or
Well, so see, I don't mind that. Like, if you're 24 and you've just got your degree out of university, and you're out in a Pilbara and you're taking a picture of some wine and you're smiling and you're having fun with I mean, to me that exudes some sort of I want to be here, people. And that's important. You're having fun with it. When somebody is just serious about everything, it's not about that. It's about having fun. So these are important things. But yeah. It's what else on your list, man? Have you got what's on
um,
your chest?
people forget as well that, especially the roles that I do. So maybe this is more a little bit inclined to the actual sort of level of roles that I am accountable for filling and I'm assigned to.
Hmm.
But people forgetting that part of their, especially the expat roles, their role is to basically backfill their own position. So mentoring and
Hmm.
training and leadership, people forget about that part. They focus on stats, they focus on the duties, and even when people do include the successes,
Yeah.
the successes also include giving up your time to mentor someone from a country, sorry, that might not have the academics that you have in Western Australia or Denver or
Hmm.
McGill University, for example, that have a long history of showing some really highly astute, high caliber mining professionals in the industry. Show that you train someone. Talk about the mentoring side of things. So that one's a little bit more close to home.
Hmm.
Um, but proficiency in language. Like I spoke to someone for a role in West Africa a couple of months ago, and they had French on their resume. And when I asked them what their proficiency in French was, they said 3 out of 10. It's not really French, then, is it? Dos cervezas, por favor, does not mean I'm fluent in Spanish. It means I can go to a bar in Spain and I whistle. Um,
Yeah.
so there's there's things people add to their resume to then, which goes against our point from earlier, weirdly enough. It shows that resumes are, a who's who in the zoo of what can go right, what can go wrong. You can sometimes over elaborate your skills as much as sort of underappreciate what you've done. But languages, software proficiencies, I think sometimes you can just hit the nail on the head of, okay, the recruiter doesn't need to ask me that question anymore because I've answered it on my resume. And we can spend more time talking about the important stuff, which is, like I said, shining a spotlight on what you're good at, because everyone enjoys doing that. But also
Yeah.
the stuff about the humility we mentioned earlier, and giving them the platform to be a human being and, talk to you
Nice.
like a human being, not,
Yeah.
like a robot, or,
Yeah.
uh, the old 1970s bankers, with a tie done up and,
Yeah. No, that's so true. And now and coming back to the start, I really like what you've done with the good branding as well. You always remember the first things you're putting out on LinkedIn is how I originally connected with you. It's always spot on, and it's got great tone, and I think that also sets the scene of how people work with you and connect with you. And I wish there would be more recruiters in the industry like that, because it would make the world a better place. You guys bring the people into this industry, move them around. I think it's an underappreciated part of our industry, right? It always gets, oh shit, I have to pay a $50,000 placement fee. That's not it, man. It's an investment that will pay itself back, very well. So I've certainly, through working with you, got more appreciation for the dark art there. But what's the future plans, man? Are we talking discovery group? Sounds like a group with 500 people, right? Is that the target, or is it
um,
issue?
well, this is my chance to be that second-hand car salesman I talked about earlier, and maybe
Yeah.
plug something. I've just tried to come into the discovery group, and I've looked at, like, I'm sure that I've seen some of your podcasts, and you talk about areas of geology and the joke that you'd like to see changed or
Mm.
manipulated slightly to be a better fit for the geologists of today, for example. And I have the same thing for recruitment. There's things that happen in the industry where I kind of look at it with a little bit of a slanted head, and like, oh,
Right.
I'm not a massive fan of that, and I will obviously never say exactly what it is, but I've tried to be pioneering in what the clients actually want. If they work with someone, they want a specialist that they can go to and get a shortlist as soon as physically possible based on X amount of years in the industry. So what I've done is I've formulated a joint venture partnership with industry players in headhunting and recruitment they specialize in areas that I'm not really a specialist in. Like
Right.
my areas are geology, technical, and executive.
Yeah.
I'll never claim to be an expert in maintenance. Now, there'll be a lot of clients maybe hopefully, watching this, and they'd say, well, I'll never go to Jon for a maintenance
Yeah.
specialist, which is fair. But the JVs are formed, they will have maybe the same experience or a little bit less than me, but they'll be in maintenance.
Right.
So I will always be the person speaking with the client, but I'll be utilizing that person's network, and I'll then be the gatekeeper saying, right, the client wanted this.
Yeah.
These are the questions that they wanted me to answer before I put anyone forward. Have you asked them? Do you mind if I jump on the phone and just clarify that with them before we put them forward? Because at the end of the day, it's my client. I have to do a good job for them.
Yeah.
And it's been the uptake of people going, oh, we've never heard about that before, or I like the sound of that, or can we even speak to the person that's going to be speaking to their network so we can give them a few more technical insights into the role. And it's such a simple process because Discovery Group is just me for now. I've got one researcher and it's me.
Yeah.
I do have the desire to grow, but right now the JV partnership is working really well, and they specialize in site-based technical roles. They specialize in corporate development and finance roles. They specialize in blue-collar roles, and it's just nice to have those to call upon because now I literally am a one-stop shop for mining clients. But also, if I can't fill the role, then I'll just be honest. I think there's too many times where we try and just sort of hoard work for the sake of it, and almost stand up in the middle of the office and going, right, who wants to work on this position? Yeah. And somebody with the least work will put their hand up and say, I'll work it because I haven't got any jobs on right now. It's not the way things should be in any industry, not just mining. So just trying to be a pioneer in different areas of the mining landscape within recruitment to try and make us not the dark arts, to actually feel like an appreciated part of the industry. Yeah. And internationally as well, which is what I love doing most. So yeah, that's the one thing I'm really sort of holding out for. And the second thing is because the industry has really given me the opportunity to forge a career in it now and form my own business and obviously have those very lovely words that you've said, which I will send the $20 across later on for saying them. But
thanks,
obviously the words
wine,
like that mean a lot. The words like that mean a lot. The testimonials on my website from some of the the highest level people in the industry, some of the testimonials on my LinkedIn, they mean most to me. But obviously I need to be commercial because this roof above his head doesn't pay for itself, of course. But that's obvious. But I want to try and give back to the industry, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier. Is I'm speaking to a number of people in the industry about rolling out or trying to roll out a program where it's almost company agnostic, and we go into like high schools and just try and change the viewpoint that people have about mining. There's a statistic going around about, I think it's 70% of the young people between 15 and 21 don't see mining as a viable career for them. And I think part of that is they think it's working out in the sticks and only working out in the sticks. But also there's the not understanding that no more are we going down the mines with, coal faces and canaries and stuff like that. The car their mum drives, the iPhone they use, the interactive whiteboard their teacher's using, the sneakers they wear, the backpacks they carry, everything. If it's not grown, it's mined. We all use it in mining. I kind of want to go back and just sort of give them the stark reality of everything you're using right now, whether you hold a picket outside PDAC every year and talk about how green things should be, right the way up to your mining centric sort of, I want to be a geologist, and everywhere in between. Mining holds such a centric part of our life these days. I kind of want to take that to high schools and just have, I don't know, hours sort of lesson per month, just tell them about it. So it's a program I really hold dear to me. Not that I fill those graduate roles, but just they are the leaders of tomorrow. And without leaders of tomorrow, who knows what the skill shortage will be like in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the right approach to your business, doing it because you love doing it and because you want to try and contribute a little bit to things. So that's I love that, Jon. It's been good. It's been good talking with you, and I think we still have to have to have that beer at some point somewhere in the world. But
Yeah. Well, New Zealand is on my agenda just because one of my best friends from university, his wife is from New Zealand. They've just moved back now to
well,
have the
there's an
second child.
excuse.
So,
Yeah.
well, it is an excuse, and
Yeah.
I've been given the blessing by my lovely significant other, who's given me the green light to go. If
Nice.
it's an excuse to go for a beer with your mates, then
Look us
I
up.
got
Let
it.
us know, man. It's been
I will
really
do.
fun talking with you. Appreciate your time. And well, I'm sure I'll talk to you soon enough again anyway. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated. Enjoyed it.
Cheers.